Revealed, how an unexpected encounter in a restaurant changed life for a waitress and a billionaire. Sarah wiped down the counter at the Maplewood diner, her thoughts lost in a haze of memories. The flickering neon sign outside cast purple shadows on the tile floor, and the rain drummed a steady beat on the roof, mixing with the familiar sizzle of bacon and the clattering of plates. She poured coffee into a steaming cup, her heart heavy with grief for her husband, who had passed just a year ago. It was all supposed to be different dreams of scholarships and a brighter future for her kids. Instead, she was confined to a routine that felt too much like survival. Each table she served was a reminder of resilience, buoyed by the laughter of regulars who had all known and loved her husband. Then, amidst the diner's comfortable chaos, the door swung open. In strolled James, a tall figure wrapped in a designer suit that seemed out of place in the welcoming chaos of the diner. He looked like a storm, full of corporate weight and expectations. The air thickened with tension as he settled into a booth, oblivious to the world around him. As Sarah approached, balance faltering under the spotlight of his piercing gaze, she caught her breath. Her nerves betrayed her, and the coffee pot swayed dangerously. The moment her hand slipped, hot coffee splashed, splattering against James's suit. Shock painted both their faces for a split second before they erupted in laughter. "I'm so sorry," she stammered, cheeks burning with embarrassment. "It's okay, really," he replied, shaking his head, amusement dancing in his eyes. As she scrambled for napkins, a connection sparked a moment of honesty amid her chaos. They talked, sharing snippets of their lives. Sarah's passion for inspiring local kids through education lit up her voice. James listened, riveted, surprised at how this waitress held dreams bigger than the confines of Maplewood. She spoke of dreams and struggle, of honor for her late husband. The warmth of her conviction wrapped around him like a blanket. But as the conversation deepened, so did the underlying tension. Sarah leaned in, her voice firm as she confronted him about his business deal that could sweep away the very cornerstones of their community. "You don't understand what it's like to lose a part of your world for profit." In that moment, their worlds collided with a jarring force. James, accustomed to boardroom deals, began to see the humanity behind the numbers. Sarah's heart raced, yet her conviction shone brighter than ever. They were vast oceans apart, wealth and struggle, but in that diner, they found common ground in their desire to make a difference. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As they debated, the diner's familiarity became a backdrop for their burgeoning friendship, his reflections deepened by her resolve. Time slowed as they recognized the potential to effect change, yet an unspoken fear lay heavy between them. Just when hope sparked possibilities, the diner door swung open again, and a group of disgruntled townsfolk stepped in, their words echoing panic. "The deal is happening. They're tearing down Oak Street." The warmth of their connection threatened to shatter. Sarah's gaze widened, her heart sinking. Would this be the moment they found a bridge or the line that sent them in different directions? As the fire within her burned brighter, she knew that answers awaited just beyond the storm. The chatter of the townsfolk grew louder, a cacophony that jolted Sarah from the moment she was sharing with James. Fear gripped her heart as she thought of the Oak Street community, the place she and her late husband had spent countless evenings with their children, listening to the laughter of friends, sharing dreams under the streetlights. Now, it felt like someone was tearing at the very fabric of her life. "Is it true?" she asked, her voice trembling as she turned to the group. "They're really going through with it?" One of the men, his brow furrowed, nodded gravely. "They've secured the permits, Sarah. The demolition is set for next week." Her eyes darted back to James, who sat frozen in his booth, the reality of her world sinking in. She expected anger or indifference, but what she saw instead was confusion. It was as if she had presented him with a riddle he could not solve. "James," she said, desperation weaving through her words. "You have to talk to them. You have the power to stop this." Questions swirled in his mind. He had always been steered by profit, the bottom line, and years of being molded into a businessman who measured success in cold, hard numbers rather than people. But Sarah's spirit challenged him, tugged at the dimmed parts of his own dreams, those he thought long buried beneath meetings and contracts. "Sarah, I never meant to hurt anyone." His voice was softer now, almost raw. The tension in her chest twisted tighter. "It's more than just numbers. You're talking about homes. Lives. You can't just sweep that aside for a bigger deal." Around them, the diner buzzed with a discordant hum. The townsfolk exchanged worried glances, disbelief etched across their faces. In this moment, their urgency mirrored her own, and she felt the weight of their collective hope resting on her shoulders. James's eyes roamed the room, taking in the worried, familiar faces. The truth struck him like a bolt. These were people who had invested in their community, their lives. How had he never seen that before? "I can't promise anything," he said finally, his expression transforming from uncertainty to determination. "But I'll try. I want to understand." Encouraged by his willingness to listen, Sarah could feel a flicker of hope break through her despair. "That's a start," she replied, a hint of gratitude in her voice. As they crafted their plan, a fragile bond began to form, strengthened by shared purpose. Despite the noise around them, they were enveloped in a cocoon of resolve, a mutual desire to protect the community they both cared for in different ways. But then, as their minds raced with strategies, the diner door swung open yet again. This time, it was an older woman, her face streaked with tears. "I just got the call," she choked out, barely able to stand. "They're not just after Oak Street, they want to move to your neighborhood, too, Sarah." Every heart in the diner sank. Sarah felt the breath leave her body. Her dreams for her children, worth more than she had ever realized, suddenly seemed so fragile. "James," she whispered, a plea wrapped in fear, "this can't be happening." He looked at her, the storm inside him visible. Where would he find the strength to fight? Was he brave enough to risk his entire world for those who needed him? As doubt shadowed their shared moment, the diner closed in around them, the town's fate hanging in the balance. What would he choose? The question echoed loudly, spanning the chasm between them. It was time for clarity. It was time for change. The reality of their choices loomed ahead. Would they stand together, ready to face what lay before them, or would hesitation pull them apart? The next steps awaited them in the quiet tension of desperation. Sarah felt her heart race as she processed the woman's news. The thought of losing her home was like a weight pressing down on her. How could this be happening? James, still grappling with the gravity of the situation, looked away from her. She could see the storm clouding his mind, and it scared her. I need to go speak with them," he finally said, rising from his seat. The urgency in his tone cut through the fear that wrapped around Sarah like a tight coil. "Go?" she echoed, confused. "Where?" "The development company," he replied, determination rising in his chest like a surge of adrenaline. "I have contacts. Maybe if I can get them to listen." Sarah's eyes widened as he moved, fueled by a mixture of fear and purpose. At that moment, he truly looked like the man she remembered. The man who believed something could be bigger than profits. She took a step towards him, feeling a spark of hope as he turned back to her. "I'll come with you," she said, a steadiness in her voice she didn't fully feel. James hesitated. If you're going to fight for this town, I want to be right there next to you," she insisted, her resolve hardening as she spoke. He studied her face, searching for the glimmer of hesitance that he feared would break apart their new alliance. But all he found was an unwavering fire. "Okay, let us do this," he agreed, a small smile breaking through his anxiety. Together, they walked out of the diner, the townsfolk watching with a mixture of fear and hope. They were two unlikely allies, her spirit, soft and resilient, and his, hard-edged yet willing to evolve. As they approached James's car, an old minivan passed them, its windows down. Inside, a group of children waved cheerfully, oblivious to the turmoil surrounding their neighborhood. Sarah's heart swelled at their laughter, a reminder of everything she had fought for as a mother. "They deserve a future here, just like we did," she whispered, and James nodded in agreement. 20 minutes later, they arrived at a sleek, modern building that stood in stark contrast to the quaint homes of their town. Checking in at the front desk, they were told to wait. Anxiety gnawed at Sarah's stomach. This was at the moment that could swing everything either way. As they sat in the waiting area, the ambience felt oppressive. Gray walls, sterile decor, it was a far cry from the warmth of Oak Street. She glanced at James, who was tapping his foot nervously. "Can I say something?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Of course," he said, looking up at her. "Just remember, it's more than just a business decision for them. It's our lives. Our memories. If you approach them like it's all about numbers," he cut her off gently. "I know, but I need to use what I have. I can't just walk in like a parent defending their playground. They'll dismiss me. Then what about a passionate homeowner?" she countered, her tone firm. "Make them see that these aren't just houses, they're homes. They're part of our lives." Before James could respond, the office door swung open and a sharply dressed woman emerged. "Mr. Thompson?" she called, scanning the room. He stood, adjusting his tie as a wave of calm washed over him. Sarah felt a pulse of fear, but also a flicker of optimism. This was their chance, a moment that could reshape everything they held dear. "Let us do this," he said confidently, glancing back at Sarah. "Yes," she replied, squeezing his hand. As they stepped into the room, the stakes felt monumental, the weight heavier than ever. A table filled with people awaited them, a board of directors whose decisions could change their entire community. "James," Sarah whispered, catching his eye just before they entered, "remember why we're here?" He nodded solemnly. And as the door closed behind them, everything hung in the balance. Would they be able to sway the hearts of those seated before them? The rhythm of their hopes echoed in the silence that followed. No one knew yet if this was the beginning of something beautiful or the end of everything they cherished. What would it take for them to be heard? Would the truth about community and compassion resonate in a room filled with profit seekers? The room buzzed with the low hum of conversation, the kind that seemed to drown out everything important in the world. Sarah felt her palms grow slick with sweat as they stepped inside. Rows of discerning eyes focused on them, sharp suits, meticulously styled hair. This was not just a meeting, it was a battleground. "Mr. Thompson, Ms. Cortez, welcome," the woman said. She gestured for them to take their seats, her demeanor friendly yet polished, devoid of warmth. Sarah sat down next to James, her heart pounding in sync with the ticking wall clock. James took a deep breath, his expression shifting to something fierce as he settled into the seat across from the board members. "Thank you for seeing us," he began, his voice steady but thick with emotion. "We're here to discuss the plans for the new development and the impact it will have on our community." The board members exchanged glances, some making notes while others folded their hands, leaning back in their chairs as if waiting for the theatrics to begin. Sarah felt a surge of energy rising within her, no more playing small. "Look," she interjected, her voice rising above the calm. "This isn't just about a few houses. These are homes, places where we've created lives, memories, and a sense of belonging. You're not just moving bricks, you're uprooting families." A man with rimmed glasses raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. "In this line of business, it's important to look at the figures and analytics," he said coolly. "Figures?" Sarah shot back, anger bubbling inside her. What about the stories behind those figures? What about the kids who play on those streets? What about our parents who raised us there? Exactly, James added, feeling emboldened by her fire. They deserve the right to decide their future. They deserve to be at the table. We're not just asking for charity. We're demanding that you see us as part of your decision-making process. The board members shifted uncomfortably, the words hanging in the air thick as fog. Sarah could feel a crack forming in the corporate wall of indifference. The woman who had greeted them leaned forward, intrigued. What specifically do you propose? Their hearts raced. Here it was the turning point. James took a moment, glancing at Sarah, catching her fierce, determined gaze. We need to find a compromise. You want to develop? Great. But let us look at preserving parts of our town. Maybe a few homes can stay. Maybe we can create a community space. Let this development serve the residents, not just the bottom line. She felt a rush of hope as he spoke. This was their chance to present an alternate vision. Silence enveloped them, the kind that felt like a veil drawn over potential futures. It became clear that the people in front of them were considering more than just dollars and cents. Who do you have in mind for this community space? Another board member asked, skeptically. James straightened up. Some of the local businesses could use the support, and they're invested in our town's future, just like us. We could collaborate. Make this a win-win situation. As they spoke, Sarah noticed a glimmer of curiosity in the eyes of one of the board members. It was faint, but it was there. Interesting, she murmured, jotting down notes. But these changes would delay the timeline we've set. That's fine. Sarah cut in urgently. We're asking you to think long-term. Quality over speed. Our town deserves time for thoughtful decisions. James nodded in agreement, his voice stronger now. Every year that goes by, we lose more of our identity. This isn't just about profit margins, it's about people. The tension shifted in the room. Discussions began quietly among the board members, their murmurs barely audible. James and Sarah exchanged a look. Was this it? Did they just plant a seed of doubt in the profit-first priority? As the seconds ticked away, they felt the weight of the moment. Sarah could see her children playing in the park just outside their home, their laughter echoing in her heart. But then, as a board member finally spoke up again, the air turned heavy. What if we can't appease both sides? What are you willing to risk giving up? The question hung in the air, threatening to unravel everything they'd just built. Could they really protect their home while negotiating with someone who might not truly care? What were they willing to sacrifice to save their community? Sarah's heart sank at the question. What were they willing to risk? It felt like a trap, a way to pit their desperate hopes against uncompromising realities. She opened her mouth, but James spoke first, his voice filled with a resolute calm. We're not here to back down. Our community is at stake, and that's something worth fighting for. He hesitated, weighing his words. I'm willing to stand for what matters most to us: our homes, our memories. A fierce determination lit up his eyes, igniting a spark of resilience in Sarah. But what does that mean practically? The woman with the notes pressed, her brow furrowed in thought. Compromise often comes with sacrifices on both sides. James leaned forward, his hands anchored on the table. I understand that. But think about it, what if we save the old bookstore? It's been there for decades, a cornerstone of our town. Let South keep the park as it is symbolic of our roots. The murmurs among the board members grew louder, but Sarah felt a knot in her chest. Would they be satisfied with mere token gestures? This wasn't just about saving a few cherished places. It was about saving the very fabric of who they were. Let me ask you, she chimed in, her words bursting forth, if it was your home, would you make sacrifices or just leave it to someone else's decisions? This is personal for us. We want our voices amplified, not silenced. A silence blanketed the room as her words resonated. She noticed some board members exchanging glances, their confidence wavering. That flicker of uncertainty was all it took to amplify Sarah's voice further. Think about the families, she continued, urgency filling the air. The children who've grown up here, the seniors who've poured their hearts into this community. Can you really just erase that history and call it progress? One board member, a woman with weary eyes and a thoughtful expression, finally spoke. I understand there are significant emotional ties, and I agree, preservation can be valuable, but it's not my decision alone. James nodded. Then let us open up a dialogue. Host a town hall meeting. Allow our community to express their concerns, their ideas. Let us collaborate, not dictate. And who knows, Sarah added, maybe you'll find support from within the community you didn't expect. We have resources too. We have passions, creativity, and love for this town. The tension broke as some members scribbled notes with intense expressions. Sarah's heart raced. Maybe, just maybe, they had struck a chord. But then, the man with the glasses leaned back, arms crossed. And if our shareholders are unhappy? Have you considered the pushback we might face? James didn't falter. There's a way to manage that. His tone was steady. Let unions work with you, present to shareholders the passion behind this campaign. Investing in community can lead to stronger returns in the long run. Respect and loyalty can translate to profits when people believe in you. The room held its breath, weighed down by uncertainty and possibility. Sarah felt a mix of apprehension and hope swell within her. Would they actually consider allowing the community a voice? Just then, a beeping noise filled the room, breaking the hushed whispers. A phone on the table lit up an incoming call. Distracted, several board members looked down, and Sarah couldn't help but feel the moment slipping away. Listen, she urged, her voice rising. We're here to forge a relationship, not a transaction. Let us be part of the solution, not merely an item on your checklist. There was a pause, each board member caught in their thoughts. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest, the urgency palpable. A neighboring board member finally lowered his phone and turned his attention back. This may not be a simple solution, he said, but there was a shift in his tone, a hint of openness. Suddenly, the door creaked open, and the icy wind gusted inside, catching everyone off guard. A figure appeared in the doorway, silhouetted against the bright hall lights. Is this the meeting for community concerns? The stranger asked, stepping inside with a determined stride. Eyes turned, curiosity piqued. Who was this unexpected guest, and what impact might they have on the discussion? The atmosphere crackled with anticipation. What would they add to this already pivotal moment? The figure stepped into the room, shaking off the cold like a dog shaking off water. It was a man, tall with shaggy dark hair that framed his face. He wore faded jeans and a hoodie, contrasting sharply with the crisp business attire of the board members. He scanned the room, his eyes settling on Sarah and James. Sarah felt a wave of relief wash over her. They needed someone brave enough to shake things up. I'm Ethan, he said, his voice warm and inviting, yet firm. I heard you guys were having a meeting about something big, community concerns, right? James nodded, gesturing for Ethan to take a seat at the table. That's right. We're discussing the future of our town. Ethan leaned forward, wait a moment. I'm a local. I grew up here and have watched things change. You know what? Watching our community be torn apart is something I can't just stand by and ignore anymore. His words hung in the air, electrifying the room. Sarah felt the tension shift, excitement bubbling in her chest as the board members shifted in their seats, intrigued by Ethan's passion. What do you propose? One board member asked, attempting to regain control of the conversation. Ethan grinned, enthusiasm spilling over. Why not start a community art festival? Something that involves everyone: artists, musicians, businesses. It'd remind people what makes our town special. We have to prove to the shareholders that investing in the community can be a win-win. The murmurs started again, and this time, they were curious rather than dismissive. Ethan's idea tapped into a sense of collective pride they'd almost forgotten. Sarah watched as Ethan's energy began to spread like wildfire, igniting hope in the hearts of those sitting around the table. James turned to Sarah, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "What do you think, Sarah? Could this work?" Before Sarah could answer, Ethan spoke again, his voice steady. "This isn't just about saving the old bookstore or the park. It's about bringing life back into our streets. Imagine art everywhere, people coming together and sharing stories. That's what connects us." One board member, the weary-eyed woman from before, leaned in, intrigued. "And how do you propose we get that support? What if it falls flat?" Ethan shook his head. "Start small. Gather support on social media. Use GoFundMe for local artists and businesses to contribute. Our community has a heartbeat, we just need to let it pulse." A sense of urgency filled the room, growing larger with each passing second. Sarah felt her heart race, the potential blooming in her chest like wildflowers breaking through the concrete. Could this be the story they could tell, one of resilience and unity? As ideas began to bounce around the table, Sarah couldn't help but feel a tingle of excitement. The conversations shifted slowly but surely toward a collaborative vision. The atmosphere pulsed with renewed energy, revitalizing even the most stoic members of the board. But then, just as momentum seemed to build, a board member threw a wrench in the positive air. "This sounds wonderful, but with all of that, you're ignoring the timeline we have with the development project. There are deadlines, legalities." Ethan held up his hand, determination woven into his expression. "I get it, but we can't let that stop us. Real change doesn't happen overnight. It requires coming together, even if the timeline is tight. If we stand strong, share our vision, maybe we can buy ourselves more time or even shift those deadlines." The tension flared again, but Sarah sensed a difference this time. Maybe something was breaking, maybe the unity they sought was finally taking root. Just when it seemed they were moving toward a breakthrough, a loud crash echoed from outside. The sound turned heads, and everyone fell silent. Suddenly, a group of protesters appeared, holding signs that threatened to disrupt what had just begun. "Save our homes!" they chanted, their voices rising like a storm. The atmosphere shifted once more. Fear, hope, and determination clashed as the board members turned to one another, uncertain. Sarah locked eyes with James and Ethan, realizing the stakes had just become even higher. Would they have the courage to face this unexpected twist? Would their voices unite in the chaos or fracture under pressure? As the voices grew louder outside, resonating through the walls, Sarah felt engulfed by urgency. How would they respond to this force of change pressing from the outside? And was their newly forged alliance strong enough to stand against it? Sarah's heart raced as she leaned closer to the table, her palms sweaty against the cool surface. This was it, this was the moment that would define their town. With the chanting reverberating like a drum, she felt the energy shift again. "Ethan, we need to do something," she said, urgency lacing her voice. The protesters were relentless, and the board members' expressions had turned from intrigued to uncertain. This was not just about an art festival anymore, this was about survival. Ethan nodded, his eyes wide with determination. "You're right. We can't let fear take over. We need to connect with them." "Connect?" a board member scoffed. "They don't want to listen." "Just listen," Ethan shot back, a fire igniting in his voice. "They're passionate because they believe they're losing everything. What if we invite them in? Let us show them we care." The murmurs cascaded through the boardroom. Reluctance flickered across the faces of some members, but Sarah could see a glimmer of hope in their tired eyes. This was their chance to bridge the divide. Sarah, Ethan turned to her with urgency. What do you think? I think it's a brilliant idea, she said, surprising herself. If we invite them in, maybe we can bring those voices to our table, help them understand our vision for the future. A stunned silence enveloped the room. It was one thing to talk about the community, but to actually engage with those who felt threatened? That was a bold move. Ethan, how do we do this? One of the board members finally asked. Let us host a town meeting. Give them a space to voice their concerns. Combine our plans with their needs, he replied confidently. Let us show them that we're not just here to bulldoze their dreams. The approval was lukewarm but growing. Sarah could sense the pivotal shift, voices were awakening around her as she caught a spark of determination in James's eyes. I'll handle the social media announcement, James said, his voice imbued with a new strength. We need to rally everyone, artists, business owners, everyone. This can't just be a few people, we need the whole town. As the pieces began to fall together, a wave of adrenaline coursed through Sarah. She could visualize the meeting, the walls filled with art, laughter, and shared fears. They were fighting for more than a festival now, they were igniting a movement. But suddenly, the loud chanting turned into furious banging against the glass of the building. The doubts crept back in. What if they don't want to listen? One board member questioned, biting their nails. Ethan took a deep breath, grounding them all with his steady presence. Then we, he emphasized, will listen louder. We can't truly build the future until we understand the past. More heads nodded. The urgency behind Ethan's words became contagious. The chant of the protesters bounced inside the boardroom, echoing hope, despair, anger, and unity all at once. All right, the weary-eyed woman said, her resolve firming. Let us do this. But we need to be prepared for backlash. Yes. Sarah felt emboldened. And let us highlight our commitment to the town. A gain for them is a gain for us. We're in this together. Just then, the banging stopped, and a hush fell across the room. Sarah's pulse quickened as she realized they had to act quickly. The balance of power was shifting, and the stakes were higher than ever. Let us invite them in, Ethan said decisively, looking around the boardroom. As soon as possible. But before another word was spoken, a voice shouted from outside. You thought you could ignore us? We're not going anywhere. Sarah's hope wavered. Could they really reach across the chasm that had been formed? Could they change hearts and minds amidst this chaos? This was a crossroads, and the next choices would determine the future of their community. What would happen if the voices outside refused to be heard? How could they unite their town when division seemed at the forefront? James stood up abruptly, breaking the thick tension that filled the boardroom. I'll get the announcement ready for social media, he said, his voice quaking but resolute. We'll make it clear, everyone is welcome to share their thoughts in this meeting. We'll listen. Sarah could feel a wave of determination sweep through the room. It was more than a simple gathering, it was an opportunity to sift through the chaos, to forge connections, and to demonstrate a genuine willingness to collaborate. Ethan, she started, catching his gaze, do you think they'll actually come? Not just come, he replied, nodding. They'll come because they want to be heard. This is their chance to voice their fears and frustrations. It's a step towards healing, for all of us. The roar of chant slowly faded into the background. The board members began to focus, sharing thoughtful glances. Sarah felt a collective pulse, a heartbeat growing stronger among them. Let us set the date, Ethan urged, his focus shifting to the surrounding space and the potential it had. We need to make sure the space is welcoming, chairs, refreshments, maybe even a local artist to set the tone. But what if they don't want to listen to us? A voice muttered from the back. The concern clung to the air, heavy and cold. Ethan turned, determination radiating from him. That's just it. We won't be talking at them, we'll be talking with them. It's an equal footing. We have to express our intentions clearly, let them see we're here to help, not harm. Sarah could see how deeply everyone wanted to make a difference. It was a gathering of hope, a small flicker of light in the overwhelming darkness outside. She imagined the townsfolk, their worried faces, skins weathered from labor, waiting for something, anything, to lift the burden of despair. With a deep breath, she stood up. We need to show that we're all in this together. Let us lay our plans out on the table. This is a community project now. If they can see how their concerns influence our direction, maybe we can minimize this rage. Ethan smiled at her, the weight of her words sliding off his shoulders, even as anxiety pressed against them. That's it, Sarah. This meeting could spark a fire of unity, but we need everyone's input. We need integrity. If we stumble together. Excitement began to build, mingling with apprehension. The murmurs of approval spread like waves, a sea of shared purpose. One by one, more members chimed in, speaking of outreach efforts and commitments to transparency. Outside, the shouts of the protesters grew louder again, filling the air with a sense of urgency. Sarah's heart sank a little. The fears rippling through their town hadn't gone away, and this isn't a perfect solution. Just then, an unexpected thought struck her. What if we invite someone from outside the town, someone who can relate to their fears? The board members paused, glancing around, considering. Like a mediator? Someone who can explain that we're not out to get them? James added, seeing the flicker of thought ignite. That could shift the atmosphere completely. Absolutely, Ethan agreed. We could reach out to a local artist whose voice resonates with both sides. That could spark creativity. Hope his voice trailed off, as if he could almost feel the energy of people coming together. A mix of voices erupted in agreement, each idea tumbling forth, each thought building on another like a mosaic. Sarah's hopeful vision of the town meeting flickered brighter. But even as the plans took shape, the chants outside returned sharp and fierce. You can't ignore us. We will not back down. It was clear the emotions running deep and raw were not done yet. The excitement in the boardroom was palpable, yet Sarah felt an unsettling knot twist in her stomach. What if their proposed solution wasn't enough? What if the raging storm of anger outside drowned out their cry for collaboration? As doubts loomed, she realized this wasn't just about one meeting, it was about changing hearts. Her thoughts flickered back to the moment they first conceived of this art festival and the boundless dreams it had once carried. Ethan looked around the room, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. Tomorrow, we begin reaching out. But I need everyone's strength to stand together. Should we call a few people now? But just as agreement swelled, the voice from outside cut through again. We want to let you decide our fate. Could this community rally together, or were they destined to stand divided, voices lost in the thunder? Sarah could feel the tension mounting. The stakes were never as high as they were now. Would their voices rise together, or would they be drowned out by fear and resentment? In that moment, they knew they had to act, but how? The next morning dawned with an eerie quiet, a stillness that felt unnatural against the backdrop of chaos from the night before. Sarah woke early, the weight of the upcoming meeting pressing down on her like a heavy blanket. She stood in her kitchen, the aroma of coffee filling the air, but it did little to settle her nerves. She grabbed her phone, scrolling through notifications, half expecting to see messages of support. Instead, she found articles and social media posts that echoed the anger brewing just outside their building. Will they even listen? She whispered to herself. As the morning stretched on, she decided to step into the eye of the storm. She found herself at the local diner, a gathering place for community chatter and gossip. The light filtering through the wide windows enveloped her, casting warmth, but she felt the chill of uncertainty creeping in. Sipping her coffee, Sarah observed the snippets of conversations swirling around her. Two men at the counter, voices low but urgent, debated the board's decisions. A woman with tired eyes, wringing her hands around her cup, shared her worries about losing her job. Sarah recognized the fear, the paralyzing dread that echoed her own. Suddenly, the door swung open, and in strode Ethan, his face a mask of determination. "Mind if I join?" he asked, his eyes scanning the room. "Of course," Sarah replied, gesturing to the empty seat across from her. She could see the same furrow of worry on Ethan's brow reflected in her own. "How are we supposed to make them believe we care if they only see us in suits?" he said, frustration bubbling to the surface. "I don't want to be another faceless board member to them." Sarah nodded, understanding his struggle. "Maybe we need to show them our humanity, not just our titles." In that moment, an older woman shuffled to their table. "I couldn't help overhearing," she said, her voice shaky yet steady. "You're part of the board, right? What are you doing about our situation?" Ethan leaned forward, his expression shifting from tense to earnest. "We're planning a town meeting. We want to hear from everyone their fears, their ideas. We need to rebuild trust." The woman's gaze softened, but her skepticism remained. "Trust is hard to come by these days. You can talk all you want, but will you listen?" It was a question that hung in the air, heavy and unresolved. A delicate silence fell as the weight of those words settled between them. "I promise you, we'll listen," Ethan said softly, his sincerity ringing clear. The woman gave a slow nod, a flicker of hope igniting in her eyes. As she turned to leave, Sarah felt a tug at her heart. She hadn't expected to witness such a poignant moment amidst the clatter of dishes and chatter. It reminded her that behind every voice in the protest was a story, a life twisted by fear and uncertainty. "What if we held smaller gatherings?" Sarah suggested, excitement building as an idea ignited in her mind. "Not just the big meeting, but workshops, smaller discussions? That way, we can engage directly." Ethan's eyes lit up. "That's brilliant. We can mix art, music, and conversation. It aligns with our goal of creating a festival. We might bridge this gap if we get to know each other better." Feeling a surge of energy, they began scribbling notes on napkins, a flurry of ideas bouncing back and forth. It felt like a shared pulse, an unspoken understanding igniting between them. The diner buzzed around them, but all they could feel was hope. But just as they delved deeper into their plans, the door swung open again. This time, it was a group of young people, faces taut with anger. "We heard about your meeting," one shouted, directing a fierce glare at Ethan. "You think we'll just let you meet without accountability?" A wave of tension washed over Sarah and Ethan as reality crashed back into their optimistic brainstorming. They might have made a crack in the wall, but there was a whole fortress left to dismantle. As the protesters flooded into the diner, their chants echoing off the walls, Sarah's heart raced. This was more than just a meeting. Now, it was a battleground for beliefs and fears. Would they face this storm united, or would the rift only deepen? In that moment, it was clear, the path forward wouldn't be easy. They had to confront their own internal fears and the boiling frustrations of the community intertwined with their own. As the tension mounted, a single thought pierced Sarah's mind: what kind of community would rise from the ashes of this storm? The answer lay ahead, shrouded in uncertainty, but one thing was evident: change was not just coming, it was already here. And with that realization, she steeled herself for the fight, determined to champion the voices of her community. Would they stand together and forge a new path, or would this divide pull them apart? The air was thick with tension as Sarah and Ethan faced the crowd now filling the diner. The young protesters, bright-eyed and full of passion, were a tidal wave of emotion. Sarah felt her heart race, but she knew they had to stand firm. "Listen!" she shouted, the diner's chatter fading as she spoke. "I know you're angry. You have every right to be. I'm here to tell you your voices matter, and we want to listen." Ethan nodded, stepping forward. That's why we're planning a town meeting. It's not just about us deciding your fate, this is about coming together to find a solution. We want to hear every concern, every idea. No one gets left out. A meeting? Just like that? One protester scoffed, arms crossed defiantly. You think we'll just trust you after what you've done? Unease rippled through the crowd, but Sarah felt the heat of a wave of determination cresting inside her. She knew their anger was justified, and she was ready to face it head-on. We know trust is hard to come by, she said, her voice steady. But we're here to show you we care. We'll be at that meeting not just telling you what we plan to do, but hearing what you want for our town. For your homes. We want solutions that work for everyone. A murmur ran through the crowd, uncertainty mixing with curiosity. Sarah could see eyes searching for hope, a glimpse of collaboration. She took a breath, ready to ground their vision in reality. What if we hosted workshops? Sarah continued. Places to bring everyone together. Each of us can share our stories, the ones behind the numbers and proposals. The ones that matter. This is about more than just buildings, Ethan added, his voice rising to accompany hers. It's about preserving our culture, our families. We can't lose what makes our community special. Slowly, she saw expressions soften. They weren't there just to confront but looking for connection, for someone or something to believe in. Sarah threw her gaze across the room, locking eyes with a few known faces from her neighborhood. Their hopeful glances fueled her fire. One older woman stepped forward, breaking through the facade of the crowd. It's great you want to listen. But how do we know this isn't just talk? Actions create trust, Sarah replied, sincerity ringing in her words. We're willing to start right now. We'd like to introduce local artists, friends, and families at the meeting. Let us come together in a way that feels authentic. Let us show everyone what Oak Street means to all of us. The initial hostility began to dissipate, replaced by tentative nods and whispered conversations. It was just a faint spark, but it was there. A glimmer of hope that change was possible. Here's what I propose, Ethan said, his eyes shining with possibility. The next week, we'll host dialogues. A chance for everyone to express their concerns, their alternatives. And then, together, we can build our future. Another voice piped up from the back, a young man with a skateboard tucked under his arm. What about an art festival, like we mentioned before? A way to unite everyone through creativity. The thought struck like a match in dry grass, and Sarah could feel the energy shift again. Exactly. That could kickstart the workshops. We can use it as a platform to voice our needs and unite. Suddenly, the air filled with excitement, ideas bouncing off the walls. We can organize food trucks, local musicians, and family activities. Someone suggested. Create a space not just to listen but to celebrate what we care about. As the crowd buzzed with enthusiasm, Sarah caught Ethan's eye. See? This is where the magic happens when we work together. Ethan smiled, his earlier determination mingled with joy, and they turned back to the crowd. This is it, you guys. If we unite our strengths, we can fight for a brighter future, not just for ourselves, but for the generations to come. The crowd erupted in shouts of agreement, the anger melting into a shared purpose. The initial vehemence had transformed into something more profound: ambition, passion, and community working towards a common goal. Let us meet. Tomorrow, same time. Sarah rallied over the newfound energy. We'll map out our next steps, and celebrate not just our concerns but our triumphs as a community. With a final chant of unity ringing in the air, the crowd began to disperse. Sarah felt a wave of relief wash over her. They had taken the first step. The beginning of something larger than either of them could have hoped for. An alliance underpinned by shared conviction, already thriving. As she and Ethan stood there, still surrounded by the remnants of passionate conversations, Sarah felt a fire ignite in her heart. It wasn't just about the town meeting anymore, it was about breaking down barriers and creating a community that would not just fight for survival, but would dance boldly into a future they could all believe in. Together, Sarah said, looking around at their diners, we've just proven that voices matter, that change is possible. Let's turn this into more than we ever dreamed. Ethan nodded. The winds of change are here. Let us ride them together. And as she embraced that hopeful vision of tomorrow, Sarah knew one thing: through every challenge they faced ahead, they would be ready. The fight they began today would echo in the hearts of their community for generations to come. This was just the beginning. Now, dear friends, it's your turn to help our community grow. You need to subscribe now to our channel so you won't miss the next exclusive stories of transformation. Leave a like right away to feed the algorithm and share these powerful stories. Comment below your thoughts and feelings about this ending, your voice matters. And most importantly, share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to hear this message of hope. Don't wait not even one more second. Real change starts with us. Let's do this, together.